This is the Cubs-related podcast presented by CubsInsider.com. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. And folks, we are coming to you on a Wednesday, and I wish we had a better subject matter for you. I think all of you wish you were listening to a podcast with a better subject matter. But for today, we will be talking about the Cubs losing 2 of 3 to the Cincinnati Reds at Wrigley Field in the middle of a pennant chase. So isn't that fun, everybody? But that is what happens. And like we have seen with too many of these series recently, Brendan, the Cubs show up in game 1. They have a nice effort. They get a nice win. And the rest of the series just goes down the toilet. And the Cubs drop Tuesday's game to Sonny Gray, who they could do nothing against, which isn't the most inexcusable thing in the world. Sonny Gray's been very good. What is inexcusable, however, is doing absolutely nothing against Tyler Mahle, who came into the game with an over 5 ERA, and he beats the Cubs. On Wednesday, the Cubs lose the season series to the Cincinnati Reds 8-11, the final total for those 19 games against the folks from Cincinnati. And with a Cardinals win on Wednesday, the Cubs will start the 4-game set at Wrigley Field, the final games at Wrigley Field in 2019, 3 games behind the St. Louis Cardinals. So, Brendan, I will bring you in here, and I think this podcast is going to be a little off the cuff, just kind of running train of thought. And for those of you waiting for the explicit episode, I think I've said before, it'll come when it deserves to come, and this team has some potential here to earn that in the next.
This was a close one.
This was close.
I did, debate doing that, but
I think if we're gonna go off, we're gonna do it when it's the official, it's over, it's time to go off. But regardless, I think this podcast might strike a similar tone. So I'll bring you in here, Brendan. We often say on this podcast that we try not to ask for specific things because it's baseball. Any team can win on every given day, et cetera, et cetera. But flat out, and putting this pretty blatantly, this is an unacceptable result from this team. This is a team that is done. Their season is over. They are not a good baseball team, and they came into your stadium and took 2 of 3 games, finishing it with just a trash pitcher in Tyler Mahle. This was unacceptable, inexcusable, and in a lot of ways, a pretty embarrassing effort from the Cubs in this series against the Reds.
And you can say the second game against Sonny Gray, right? Like, okay, you can see how that would have been a difficult game.
Right.
But to follow up, Corey, the next day against Tyler Mahle, wasted leadoff walks, terrible, absolutely mind-boggling, terrible base running. What? Again, what is that, dude? And look, the bullpen is in shambles right now. Kinsler is injured. Kimbrel is injured. I get it. It's difficult to manage. But when we are going through the end of this game, and half of Iowa's bullpen are now staples, that can't happen, dude. And I get injuries are a part of it, but this entire season has come to this point because the April games, the May games, the June games, the off-season decisions, the suboptimal managerial decisions have snowballed. We are 140 runs greater in run differential than Milwaukee. And we are tied, Corey, in the wild card. 140 runs. That's unacceptable, Corey. That should be almost a 14-game difference. What the hell is that? So yeah, I'm heated. I'm this close to going explicit, and that is an unacceptable performance against that team in almost a cellar. You cannot waste an opportunity like that, and they wasted it. 3 games back of St. Louis, 10 games to go. That cannot happen.
Yeah, so Mark Gonzalez from the Tribune tweeted out that Tyler Mahle allowed a career-low tying 1 hit. He only did it 1 other time in 2018, also against the Cubs. Stop me if you're shocked to hear that one. And he surrendered his fewest runs since May 18th, somehow against the Dodgers. It is his 7th quality start in 23 starts this season. Again, guys, like, baseball happens. It's a hard sport, and it's often very representative of the anything can happen on any given day kind of ideology. But this can't happen. This is just an unacceptable result in this series. And I think everybody would have been totally thrilled taking 2 of 3. You would have picked up a game on Milwaukee. You would have stayed 2 back of St. Louis. And over the course of these days, you would have picked up a game on Washington as well. So all told, it would have been a pretty productive series. You would have been able to go into this series against the Cardinals. And again, like we've talked about, take care of business and the division is yours, or at least a playoff spot is yours. And, we just see this feeble effort. And like you said, Brendan, we see more of the bad base running. We see more of the mistakes in the field from various guys. And like you also pointed out, we end up in a spot, like, I get that injuries happen. I'm not going to make excuses. But when we end up in a spot where we are throwing Derek Holland, David Phelps, Dwayne Underwood, James Norwood in high leverage spots in must-win games, I don't care who you want to lay the blame at. It's just not a situation that we should be in. Right. And I know that some of you are thinking, well, no Javi, no Rizzo. Of course, we all are acutely aware that Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez are not on the field. But you're in this spot because of the way you have played over the last few months. There's no excuses at this point. You can't write this off due to injuries because you're only relying on winning these games because you clowned around for so long. How many times do we point out on this podcast how long the stretch was that this team has been playing 500 or worse baseball? That is why you are playing must-win games with the Cincinnati freaking Reds in the middle of September. Yeah. You have done this to yourself. You deserve to be in this spot with how you have played, and it's really disappointing, man. Like, you had such a good series against Pittsburgh. You scored all those runs, and it really looked like a situation where this group was going to at least put their best foot forward during this final stretch and go into these Cardinals games and try to take care of business. And all of this is still on the table, right? And like we've said, the playoff spots are still there. The division is still there. So we're not writing this team off, but I think it's very fair to be pretty heated on a night like this one because this was a piss-poor effort. The Reds move Luis Castillo from starting in this series. I mean, they did you a favor. They took their best pitcher and didn't even throw him in this series. Joey Votto doesn't play in one of the games. Like, this is just not a series that you can lose, Brendan. And again, like you said, games like the Sonny Gray one are going to happen. Yu Darvish was fantastic in that game. He got beat in 1 inning. And he got it together, and he's striking out the entire world, right? And Sonny Gray has had a sub-3 ERA coming into the game. He was very good. He has been good. It happens, right? You can accept losses like that, but you have to be able to come back and pay it off against a guy like Tyler Mahle and some of these other guys in the Reds bullpen. And it was just a feeble effort from the jump. Again, errors on the bases, errors in the field. And when you talk, Brendan, about having such a higher run differential than some of these other teams that the Cubs are losing to or that they're in this playoff race with, those are the margins where this stuff gets exposed. Inconsistent relief pitching, inconsistent defense, inconsistent base running, like that is how you make up all those runs and where you kind of close that gap a little bit in some of these games. So I don't know, man. That was a very frustrating 2 days at Wrigley Field, and the mood leaving that game on Wednesday night was, another in the line of pretty strange ones. Like you really feel the crowd at Wrigley Field in times like this really digging deep and trying to give this team every ounce of energy that they have. Every 2-strike count in those high leverage spots, the crowd is up. They're trying to will good things into existence, and they just can't make it happen, man. And again, like you've set yourself up now where, now you need to really take care of business against the Cardinals. Like, you have just set yourself up for a very difficult path here. You have let a Milwaukee team into this race. Again, we can go back to those last 2 series against the Brewers where the Cubs win the first game and they disappear for the rest of the series, that one at Wrigley Field and the one at Miller Park. And now Milwaukee is tied with you. They have I believe, the easiest schedule of any of the teams involved in this conversation. I don't think they play anybody that's above fourth place in their division for the rest of the season. And you're going to have to find a way to keep pace with all of these teams. And it's a tough task. And it's a situation that, unfortunately, this team sort of deserves to be in with the way that they played.
And it's okay to be, like, upset. Like, this is not a time for, like, intellectual baseball talk, okay? Like, that can be said during the offseason. It's okay to react. I'm pissed off right now. I don't care how we got here. I am pissed off that they played like that. And Mahle was on the injured list for like almost 2 months, Corey. He came back on the 1st of September. This was his 4th start back since going on the injured list on July 22nd. Since then, he, in his most recent 2 starts, has gotten absolutely shelled, okay? In almost 8 innings, he's given up 9 runs, Corey. And he comes out making a spot start basically because of Luis Castillo being moved, doing the Cubs a favor, and the Cubs get 1 hit off the guy. Just 1. Making dumb base running decisions again. Love Castellanos. Even that was a borderline hyper-aggressive decision. Yeah. Even Jim Deshaies is like, you know what? Don't really agree with that decision, even though it worked out. Those are pressing type decisions. And we'll get into the Madden stuff when the season ends, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But point being, to perform like this when the stage is set for you, you're playing the Cincinnati Reds. The Cardinals are playing the Washington Nationals. They just took 2 of 3 against the Nationals, against Strasburg and Scherzer, and you do that to the Cincinnati Reds against Tyler Mahle.
Yeah.
Corey, what on earth did we just witness there? And it's not to say that, and before I give you it back here, it's not to say the Cubs are not trying. That's not what we're saying here. It's just, it sucks to be in the situation where you're looking at Dwayne Underwood to relieve James Norwood, because Norwood is the one that blew the game. That absolutely sucks. I don't care how we got here. That can be heavily diagnosed in 2 weeks. But to get to that point where half the Iowa bullpen is now pitching in these situations, in dire situations, in situations where the season is quite literally on the line, is mind-boggling. Completely unacceptable.
Yeah. And again, you have nobody to blame but yourselves. Over the last week, you have lost 4 games to the San Diego Padres and the Cincinnati Reds. That's why you are where you are. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it, and it's just very frustrating. I think you're right, Brendan. Like, it's we're still in that weird spot because, again, like right now, you know, a playoff spot, a division title are all not out of the question, not even in the least, right? Like they're very attainable, but to not be able to take care of business against bad teams on this stretch, especially at home, is just a killer, man. And as we always say, like, now you leave so little room for error. So now going forward in these remaining games, if baseball stuff happens, right, like it's a game of inches, the ball is fair by a foot, ball gets over the fence.
Against Sonny Gray, Schwarber's double was an inch away from going into the basket, and that could have been the difference right there. You have zero margin for error. You have to be perfect every single inning.
Right, like Dexter Fowler in that game today against the Nationals robs a home run by 2 inches. Like, this is the stuff that now you need all of this to go your way, right? You need to play good baseball, and you need all of these little bounces, all of these little things to go your way. And it's a tall order because, again, like, the Cardinals are playing pretty good baseball. You know, they were that Ryan Braun grand slam away from winning that series with the Brewers. They beat Scherzer and Strasburg in this Washington series because, of course, they do.
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
And it's not going to be an easy task to beat this team. They're playing well. You're going to face some good pitching at points in this series, and it's not going to be an easy task. And I think at times with this group, And now, granted, they've paid this off more often than not, but so many times with this group, it feels like there's still time. They'll get it going, eventually type vibe. And
10 games away.
You're running out of runway. Yeah. There's not a lot of runway for this. So
yeah.
I don't know, man. It was just...
I don't get it, man.
Yeah, a very frustrating series. It's been a frustrating week, and I really thought that with the way these first 4 games of this homestand went, I really thought that we were going to see a nice little run here for this team.
They suckered us right back in because, of course,
and
that's
kind
happened.
of like let the chips fall where they may, right? Like if the Brewers get on a heater here, it is what it is. If you take care of business against the Cardinals, but it's not enough, it's so be it. We're already in this spot. You're kind of just taking the landscape as it is. But to be dropping games to the Reds at home and that series with the Padres where you threw a couple games away, it's frustrating. And I think at times, it's difficult to just rely on them kicking it into gear when they need it to, because then where was it tonight? I just don't know. So I did want to ask you, Brendan, I think one of the big topics on social media, at least from what I was perusing, was the bullpen usage tonight. And we've, I hope, made it very clear that when you do such a piss-poor job against Tyler Mahle, I'm definitely not looking at Joe Maddon in the bullpen trying to figure out why they didn't win the game. I'm looking at the offense and trying to figure out why you can't hit a guy that everybody else in the league seems to hit, which unfortunately is an all too familiar question for this Cubs team. But I do want to talk just about the bullpen stuff. Obviously, pulling John Lester early, using Pedro Strop in the situation that he did, and just some of the other decisions that went on Wednesday. Did you take any issue with anything that Joe did? Did you want him to do anything differently? What did you see out there?
The only criticism I had was maybe using Kyle Ryan earlier instead of Strop. Maddon loves the matchups. He likes using the lefty-lefty, righty-righty. Strop, he was available. Unlike Kinsler, dealing with that oblique injury, unlike Cizek, who was out for pitching multiple days. So really there's no one else to use in that 7th inning. The only criticism I had of this day, of that Wednesday game, was maybe not going to Ryan to start the inning. That's it. Other than that, I thought Joe did a fine job. I agreed with pulling Lester early. I agreed going to Rowan Wick in that situation, of course. I agreed going to David Phelps in that situation. But after those guys pitched, after Chatwood pitched to go into extras, who else do you have, Corey? I mean, this is what we're talking about, where the bullpen has been really good in the past few weeks. They've been among the best in terms of run prevention for quite a bit of time now. And that is to Tommy Hodavy's credit. To some degree, Joe Maddon managing these guys in situations. So it's not as if we're throwing that out of the water. There is still, there's a lot of positivity, even though it's hard to accept that right now. But nevertheless, when the season goes down the line, and we're 10 games away, and now Kimbrel is still trying to get his way back, and Cizek coming back from an injury, not even being able to go multiple days, and at times not looking like his normal self, then eventually that catches up to you, and you can't sustain this level of production. But in terms of Joe Maddon's usage in Wednesday's game, we're nitpicking. And I hate playing this game, Corey. Like, if this is one of my biggest pet peeves. Who is to blame the most for losing this game? Well, this is a team effort across the board.
It's the offense, I think, pretty
but
clearly.
But I mean, like,
tonight.
we try to figure this out. Is it Theo? Is it Joe? Is it the bullpen? Is it the offense? You know what? This is a systematic disappointment. Yeah. And it's not even, like, to a degree, it's not even worth discussing, dude. Like, everyone is at fault for where they are at this point.
Well, and this was
Everything
just such a 2019 Cubs loss. It just felt like there were elements in this game.
And how many times have we said that, though? This is a 2019 loss.
Unfortunately.
And that's the problem, because you know that these losses are familiar, and these losses are familiar because we were scared these losses would happen 7 months ago, and they're happening, Corey.
Yeah, I want to read a tweet from friend of the podcast, Randall J. Sanders, who's an excellent Twitter follow, and I just thought this kind of summed it up. And he said, that's such a 2019 sequence in such a 2019 inning. Talking about the inning the Reds score off of Norwood. 2 quick outs, and 3 batters later, you're burned by 3 guys who shouldn't be giving a competent pitcher any trouble. And it really felt like that. They get 2 quick outs there, and then you've got a wild pitch getting a guy in scoring position, and the whole thing just unravels to the point that you're finding yourself losing the game to, who was it? Alex Blandino? Is that who drove in the? Oh no, it was Alex Blandino gave them the 2-1 lead. Jose Iglesias gave them the
minor league deal. Jose Iglesias,
Jose Iglesias, who came into the game with like a sub 700 OPS, and these are the guys that you're trying to figure out how to get out and why they're beating you and trying to ruin your season. So it's just a frustrating spot. I mean, I'm not really sure how else to phrase that. You've just seen this too many times where they can't get the big hit. They can't do good work against a bad pitcher. We're playing this blame game with Joe and the bullpen and the front office, and it's just such a familiar tale. I always use this phrase for different reasons, but I've seen this movie before, and tonight it ended just like it always does, with some dumb loss that we're all going to look back on in 2 weeks and say, well, would have been nice if they had won that one, or would have been nice if they had won that one, or that one, or that one, or that, right? Like, I could go on for a while.
Dozens.
So going back to the bullpen stuff, I'm with you. Look, I've said many times I would take a bullet for Pedro Strop, but I don't think he should have been in that spot. I know guys are hurt. I know that you had Rowan Wick throw 2 innings on Monday. You've had a lot of these guys used an awful lot, but I don't think he should have been in there. It wasn't really his fault. It was a couple, I think, kind of soft hits that get through and start that situation when Kyle Ryan came in and ultimately gives up the sac fly. But I think in that spot, you should just be going to Ryan there and try to move the game along with your best relievers for as long as you possibly can. But to a degree, I suppose I understand what Joe is doing there. The only other thing that I might have questioned, and I was at the game, so pardon me if I wasn't paying attention or if I'm just missing something, but I wouldn't have hated seeing Chatwood double switched into the game so that he was able to stay in the game and not have to get pinch hit for immediately.
Yeah, I can see that.
He's been good, and he's someone who can give you length. So in a game where you're kind of waiting around for your offense to do something, I might have tried to see what we could get out of him. I mean, he was literally touching 99 at the Wrigley Field scoreboard. I don't know what it said on TV.
It was the highest one-game average of his career. Corey.
Yeah, I mean, he was pumping gas, and he looked great.
Absolute gas, yeah.
And, so then you take him out, you've gotten rid of one of your long men, and now you are going to go to Wick. And again, he pitched 2 innings on Monday, I believe. And so you're not going to be able to get more than an inning out of him. And, now you're sort of deliberately shortening that bullpen, and that's why you see guys like Derek Holland and Norwood and Underwood have to come into the game. So, again, though, like, I know Joe's in a tough spot. You don't have Kinsler, you don't have Kimbrel, and the bullpen wasn't well constructed to begin with at the beginning of the season and throughout the season. So this has been a constant problem. But unfortunately, when you have losses like this, the only thing to do kind of sometimes is pick them apart and try to find those moments where you could have done something differently and could have done something better. But I really have a difficult time blaming the pitching staff or Joe for a game where the Cubs offense puts up 2 runs where, Tyler Mahle is the starter. You had Romano come into the game, who has not been good for them out of the bullpen. Stevenson has been, I think, all right, pretty good at times, but still, you need to do better work against these guys. instead of asking your pitching staff to shut down a Reds offense that has some really good hitters in it for 10 innings. I just have a tough time laying that at their feet, even if I do think that some things could have been done differently. And I didn't necessarily disagree with even taking John out. That was a dangerous spot for him. I was a little worried that John was going to get into a fight with Joe, because even from my seats, which are pretty far back from the mound, you could see the steam coming out of John's ears.
There was no eye contact from John to Joe. He's like, do not even look at me, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, even from where I sit, you could kind of tell that John was like, you have got to be kidding me. You better not be coming out here to talk to me. But yeah, I just think it's, and again, like, I don't want to like make this the Cubs couldn't hit Tyler Mahle episode, but you just don't have a choice, guys. Like, this is where you have played yourself when you're competing for a 88 to 90 win division or whatever it's going to be. These are the things you have to do. And unfortunately, we have not seen the two teams, at least in the division that you're competing with, like the Cardinals and Brewers are not losing a lot of games like this. They're taking care of business in a much stronger way than the Cubs, obviously, with the way the standings are playing out. And this is, I think it's fair to be a little upset about this. And it's a shame because, again, like, that Monday win was a nice win. They come out and they score 3 early in the bottom of the first of that game, and the Reds pull it to 3-2, but the Cubs pull themselves away, have a nice 8-2 win, and you're ready to hand the ball to Yu Darvish for that game on Tuesday, and John Lester, in a big spot in a must-win game, and he was good in this game, as he usually is when the Cubs need him to perform well. And the offense just can't get it done. 2 runs in as many games, or 2 runs on each day for the Cubs on Tuesday and Wednesday, and that is why we are where we are. So I don't know, man. It's this team
it sucks.
Is quite the roller coaster. Is really all it is. Like, just when you think that they can turn a corner and put something together, they just don't seem to be able to do it for the sustained period that we really need them to, and that they've kind of played themselves into needing to do. So it's about these Cardinals games. I mean, you've got 10 games left. You've got 7 of them with the St. Louis Cardinals. You're going to need to figure out a way to show up. And after a game like Wednesday, I know it's hard to figure that, but we have seen this team at times play down to competition, and then they show up when the going gets tough, I guess, and that's they have no choice. I mean, you really have no choice. You've played yourself into a situation where you need to give a good effort in these 4 games against the Cardinals, otherwise you're going to be in real trouble here.
Yeah, and it's an important distinction too, like when, and I want to make this clear, when you and I express frustration, it's not like, hey, why aren't you, hitting more home runs? It's not like that. Like, if you listen to these players' post-game interviews, they're expressing disappointment as well. I mean, quite literally, Corey, the president of baseball operations goes on the radio and says his team, which he constructed, is playing uninspiring baseball.
Yeah.
Kind of blasting the team. So, like, when we do this, like, I love almost everyone on this team. We really do. And I really admire how Wilson Contreras worked his way back from the hamstring injury. Blasted a home run tonight. Love the adjustments Schwarber made. Love that Rizzo's trying his hardest, Corey, to get back from an ankle injury that might take a month and a half to get back from. Love what Kimbrel's trying to do, right? There's so many different examples. Chris Bryant playing through what's clearly a bum knee, taking cortisone shots, winning player of the week as a result. Like, these guys are trying so damn hard, but falling short for reasons that are some obvious in terms of roster construction, but other reasons that are still escaping us. Like, why is this happening? Why does your team, which has a run differential almost 140 runs greater than that of Milwaukee, why are you tied in the wild card race? Like, there's some explanations that make sense, and there's others that you have no idea what's going on. And those are kind of where my attention is directed right now. Like, how did we get here? And so I think that's an important distinction. Like, of course, in these 10 games, you and I are going to be on the edge of our seats, of course, cheering these guys on, giving as much energy as possible. I mean, you go to every game, Corey, every single game. So it's not anger or disappointment at efforts, even though we say, oh, it's a poor effort. What we really mean is like, how on earth in that stage could that happen? How can Tyler Mahle shut you down like that? And that's where the frustration lies. And it's disappointing. It's hard to go right back into another game knowing that you could be 2 games back of St. Louis going into the last 7 of 10 against that same team with a real opportunity to win and take back that division. And it just sucks to go back into the series now down 3 games after you just put up, 45 runs or whatever the hell it was in that 3-game set against Pittsburgh. And you get 1 hit off of Tyler Mahle. And that's been the story for 3 years, is the inconsistent offense. Sahadev Sharma of The Athletic pointed this out even last year, looking at the run distribution of the Cubs and how they had some of the most 1, 2, 3-run games and some of the most 8, 9, and 10-run games as well. So for some reason, this team is inconsistent, whether that's scouting, whether that's actual personnel, whatever. I have no idea, but that's where the frustration is, because there are no clear answers. And that is hard to accept at times, like it is right now.
Yeah, it's never a question of effort in a sense of, are these guys trying? What we mean by effort is you need to figure out a way to put better at-bats together against someone like Tyler Mahle. You need to figure out how to be making better contact, how to do all these things better so that the results are better. It's not, are these guys trying? Of course not. But it's frustrating. I don't know. I think that's all I have on this Red series. I think we have to look forward to this Cardinal series, and it's, again, Brendan, it's a shame because there are some individual things that we were really hoping to be able to highlight, and it just doesn't feel as exciting as it would have had they, just been able to win one of these last 2 games. And you look at someone like Kyle Schwarber, who hits the go-ahead and ultimately game-winning home run in the first inning of that game on Monday, a 3-run shot to get that night going. You have him go, 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs in that game that Sonny Gray started, seemingly the only person in the Cubs offense really trying to participate in that game. And it would have been nice to be able to discuss him and his continued adjustments, the continued amount that he is going to center and the opposite field with a lot of these balls, because I think it's an extremely important development going on in this Cubs system, that Kyle Schwarber is really making those adjustments and evolving into a different player and kind of that player that we've all hoped he could be, but it just gets overshadowed, and it's hard for it not to get overshadowed. And Brendan and I always talk about, it's hard for us to even get a read on which direction you guys want us to go in a series like this, because I follow a lot of you guys on Twitter, I interact with a lot of you guys on Twitter, and I see that frustration from everybody, and I think we're all kind of scratching our heads as to why this team has been so inconsistent and why we see games and performances like this on such a regular basis. So I wish I had the answer for you. But again, let's take a look at the lay of the land here, because regardless of how frustrating that series was, the beat goes on, and we have 10 games left in this season. And it's going to be down to the wire. So the NL Central will come down to one of the Cardinals, Cubs, or Brewers. The Cardinals sit in first place. They are 3 games ahead of the Cubs and Brewers, who are tied, obviously. And 7 of those games, as I've said 1,000 times, will be against the Chicago Cubs, starting with 4 on Thursday in Wrigley Field. As far as the wild card is concerned, the Cubs sit 1.5 games behind the Washington Nationals. The Cubs and Brewers are tied for that second wild card spot. The Phillies and the Mets are 3 games out, and the Diamondbacks are 4.5 games out. So that is where things sit. The Cubs, again, will play the 7 with the Cardinals, and then they have 3 with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So This is where we are, folks. This is the lay of the land. This is what we are going to try to wade our way through. And Brendan, you have to turn it around, and you have to turn it around quick. I think, again, the Cardinals are probably coming in here riding a little bit of a high. That was a very good series for them against a tough Nationals team and against a tough rotation for the Nationals with the guys that they were lined up against. So for them to be able to take 2 of 3 there is a big series for them. And they are going to be looking to put you out of reach here. So you got to turn this thing around on Friday, and there's really not a lot of room for error here because you are kind of fighting this battle at multiple ends. Again, the Brewers are not going to be playing good teams for the remainder of the season, so they are going to continue breathing down your neck and trying for that final wild card spot. And like I just read, you're going to have teams like the Phillies and the Mets, etc., like still trying to sneak their way in there. So even if the Brewers or the Cubs are not able to do it, like there's still teams, trying to get in there, and they're going to put their best effort to make that happen. But the Brewers have one more with the San Diego Padres on Thursday, and then they will be playing the Pittsburgh Pirates at home while the Cubs and Cardinals do battle together. So listen, I don't think I have to tell you guys, I would expect nothing from the Pittsburgh Pirates. They are an absolute mess at the moment, and I would not be counting on them to do very much in the way of helping you. So you're going to have to do your job here, and it's going to start. You're going to have to turn it around quick because you're going up against Flaherty on Thursday night. It'll be Hendricks for the Cubs.
Jesus Christ!
So you're getting their best. You're getting a guy who's been incredible in this second half, putting together an extremely good season for the St. Louis Cardinals. And you got to kick it into gear here. So as we've been saying, like, I am not going to write off a team that has a chance to make the playoffs. And I'm not naive. I've watched all these games. I've talked with you guys about all of these games. I'm not naive at how this team has played and how much of an ask it might be for this team to get hot and play well at the right time and expect that that's going to happen. But the chance is there, and until it is mathematically impossible, we're going to be here trying to get in the playoffs, trying to win the division, and it doesn't really matter how ugly the path is if you can pull it off. But they're going to need to show up tomorrow and, as Joe says all the time, throw that Cincinnati series in what is a grossly overflowed trash can. I mean, just health code violation all over the place with how disgusting that trash can is throughout the season, with how many losses have been tossed in there. But you're going to have to turn it around quick because Flaherty's no joke, and this Cardinals team is going to be, you'd have to think that they're sitting with 10 games left, 3 games ahead of the 2 teams chasing them. They must be smelling blood in the water, and they know that this path runs through them, and so you're going to have to change that plan for them.
If there is one encouraging sign or one thing that gives you confidence that the Cubs can do this, and I know it's hard to search and try to find that one player or that one thing, but what is that for you, Corey? For me, I'll start it off, it's Kyle Schwarber. What he's done for the last 2 months has been exceptional. We're talking about sustainable production at a top tier level, hopefully going into next year or throughout next year, due to the changes to his batting stance, to the pre-pitch movement, to going to the opposite field with authority more, to him saying that he wants to adopt Rizzo's 2-strike approach. That, for me, gives me confidence that, in 10 games, anything can happen, but just the way that he's looked over the last 2 months, and especially over the last 2 weeks, having a bat in the middle of the order like that gives me confidence. I mean, any other player, or maybe it's just Schwarber in particular, what is going to give you confidence when you wake up on Thursday morning and to watch this Cubs-Cardinals games, and when you see that one thing or that one player come up to bat, who is it?
I mean, I think Schwarber's definitely the person at the moment, but just to give a different answer, I mean, as long as Nick Castellanos is still a Chicago Cub, it gives me confidence. The guy at a lot of times in some of these games seems to be like really doing his best to put the team on his back, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way, but he's still been a major spark plug. He puts together really good at bats the majority of the time, and I think when you have a player like that and the energy that he's brought, it gives them a boost. And I hope that KB didn't have a good couple games here to end this Cincinnati series, but obviously was hitting the ball really well in that Pittsburgh series. So you hope that he's still feeling well and is able to give 100% health wise for this St. Louis series. He's not 100% health wise, but just in terms of whether that's hampering his play, I guess is what I meant. And I still continue to be quite impressed at Nico Horner. I know he goes 0 for 4 in that last game against the Reds, but the at-bat that he put together against Iglesias I thought was pretty impressive. And, it ends in a line out to right field. Of course,
I thought that was dropping too.
Yeah, of course the fielder is standing right there because teams
other
than the Cubs position their defense pretty well. But it was an impressive at-bat. Iglesias is really tough. He's got some nasty stuff. That's a tough matchup, righty on righty. And, for a guy who's 22 years old stepping into this situation, that is not an easy task with the weight of the Wrigley Field faithful kind of bearing down upon you. So I was impressed that he was able to put that at-bat together. I admittedly did not have a lot of confidence in that at-bat. He took a pretty ugly swing early in that at-bat to start it. And for him to stay composed there and put a good swing on the ball, make some good contact that with different outfield positioning might have tied that game, I think is really impressive. And we've said since he's come up that a lot of this is going to be very valuable, not just for the 2019 team, but for him going forward and for the Cubs going forward. And I think this experience has really shown us a lot, and he's been very impressive. And so I think that's been a definite bright spot of what's going on. And I do also want to give a proper amount of credit. We've done it a good amount throughout the year, but I got to throw out there again, man, like Victor Caratini has been a really important piece for this team in 2019. And you look at the way that he filled in at first base tonight, and he made some really nice plays. He had a good stretch on a ball that was a close play late in this game that they needed every inch of to make sure that they got that out. He turned that double play on the ball hit down the line earlier in the game, which that's a tough play for a guy that isn't a first baseman, to field that ball, step on first, make a good throw to second to be able to get the tag out after you've stepped on first. That's a difficult play, and for him to be able to move back and forth between catching and playing first base like that is really important. And with the injuries that they've had, Contreras missing time, Rizzo now missing time, and Caratini doing all of this when he himself missed time with the hand injury earlier in the year is really impressive. And I think that he deserves a lot of credit for the role that he has played and the job that he's done stepping into some of these roles. So yeah, It's gonna be a weekend, Brendan. I was sitting at the game tonight and kind of already preemptively nervous for the game starting this weekend. I was hoping that the Cubs would win tonight and that would kind of alleviate some of them, but this is the baseball we sign up for, folks. This is September baseball.
I didn't sign up for this one.
Well, yeah, I guess I just meant like games in September that count and carry weight. But yeah, no, we didn't sign up for this type of
This is like my biggest nightmare for this year. Is like going down the stretch without Javi Baez and Chris Bryant being injured and Anthony Rizzo being out and the bullpen in shambles. Not really in shambles, but you get what I mean. This is like my worst case scenario. So it sucks, but you know what? A playoff spot is right there.
Press on. Yeah.
You got to press on. You're, a game and a half back of Washington, so you still want to look out there, and they haven't been playing that well either. So at the very least, you have a shot, right? Like even if Washington starts to lose and Milwaukee sustains their pace, okay, then you have Milwaukee and you have the Cubs in a wild card game. Does that suck? Absolutely. Will I take it at this point? I will take it at this point. It's just how it works. But going back to that Victor Caratini point, on the year, numbers are phenomenal. Batting .274, he's got 10 home runs in 251 plate appearances. He has a WRC plus of 112, a WOBA of 346. He has been worth 1.5 WAR. If you scale that down to 500 plate appearances, then of course that is 3 WAR. That is a well above league average player at a pre-arbitration price as your backup catcher, Corey, which is even more impressive. So at least, yeah, I mean, like it's hard to bring about and think of all the encouraging signs and the players. I mean, even Victor was not even on my mind tonight, even though he's been so good. Gave the Cubs another opportunity with that double down the left field line, stranded in scoring position because, of course, that's how it works. But yeah, Victor has been phenomenal. Nico has been absolutely insane. He has a WOBA of 360. I mean, even before tonight's game, after being screwed by some of these defensive plays, his WOBA was like around 410, 420. He's been absolutely insane, making great defensive plays out there, filling in for Javi at an exceptional level. So as much anger we have, disappointment, sadness, if you will, there are still good signs. And I think those types of signs can carry this team for 10 games if they continue to play at this pace. And I think at this point, that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, so you should be getting Craig Kimbrell back at some point over this weekend. Hopefully he is as healthy as he can be and at least someone that Joe can rely on. Hopefully Kinsler is able to get back. He's dealing with a little bit of an injury himself. And you have a little more...
expect Kinsler to be activated this weekend as well. So
hopefully you have a couple of guys that have done some good work for you in high leverage innings, and you can kind of give Joe a few more options there. And again, like they need to go on a heater, folks. I mean, that's all it is. They need to play their best baseball of the entire season over these next 10 days. That is what they have boiled it down to. That is the situation that they have kind of created for themselves. They have made this bed, and they are going to have to lie in it if ultimately things don't work out. But again, you boil it all down, and you have to look at it as there are 10 games left. They can win the division. They have the ability to control that, and they can get into the playoffs. And that is what you have to focus on. And I think that the frustration that we express in a lot of these episodes, and certainly tonight, goes back to what we've been saying all year, that obviously now you've got a lot of injuries, and this team is in a different place than a month ago or however long ago. But the frustration stems from just believing that this group, at least from the beginning of the year, should have been better than this. And they should have been better than to be in this situation and to need to win certain games like this and to need to play exceptional baseball over this 10-game stretch. I think we all genuinely believe that they should have been better than that as they were constructed. And a lot of us, I think most of us, believe they should have been constructed a little better to ensure that. So that's, I think, where that frustration comes from. But you've got no choice. Perhaps you have a choice. If you want to write this team off and you want to say that they're done and they suck, and you're already plotting your list of who should be traded and fired and extended, whatever, that's your choice. You can do whatever you want as a fan. But these playoff spots are still there, and even if you're looking at this going, I don't care if they make the playoffs, they're just going to get knocked out by the Braves, or they're just going to get knocked out by the Dodgers, whatever, so be it. But for me, I will go through that. I want them to make the playoffs. I want them to make the wild card. I want them to win the division until there's no chance for them to do that. And there's no wavering in that. There's no question in my mind ever that is how I approach this. You want them to get in the playoffs no matter what the path is, no matter how ugly it is, no matter what your confidence level is. The goal is to make the playoffs and give yourself a chance. And they have that opportunity, and they've got to figure out a way to come together and do it. These are the last 4 games at Wrigley Field for the 2019 regular season. And if this is the last time that I see this team in person in 2019, you can take to the bank, folks. I will give every bit of energy that I have. I will be at every game this weekend. I will be standing at every opportunity. I will be clapping. I will be cheering. I will be yelling. I will be with this team until there is no team left to be with, right? So that's just how I am. I think that's how Brendan is. If that's not how you approach it, that's not how you approach it. We all go through this differently. The Cubs occupy a different space in all of our lives. We all, I think, experience this in different ways. So I don't think that there is necessarily a right way or a wrong way to be a fan or to go about this. But for our money on the Cubs-related podcast, I believe if the Cubs have a chance to make the playoffs, we are going to be rooting for them to make the playoffs, and we are going to be living and dying with every pitch until they either do or until it's not possible anymore.
Let's preview this last 4-game set at Wrigley Field. So the Cubs will welcome St. Louis on Thursday for a 6:15 p.m. Central start time. Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Cardinals, 10-8 with a 3.05 ERA. He's been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball in the second half and all of this year. He'll be facing Kyle Hendricks on the mound, who has been pretty good himself, a 11-9 record, a 3.26 ERA on Friday through Sunday, all-day games, your typical 1:20 p.m. Central start time. Michael Wacha on the mound for this one, 6-7, a 4.76 ERA. Jose Quintana on the mound for the Cubs, a 13-8 record, a 4.37 ERA on Saturday. That afternoon start time, we have Dakota Hudson on the mound for St. Louis, a 16-7 record, a 3.35 ERA. Cole Hamels on the mound, a 7-7 record, a 3.92 ERA. To finish off this 4-game set, we have Miles Mikolas on the mound, a 9-14 record, a 4.29 ERA. He'll be facing right now the Cubs ace Yu Darvish on the mound, who is 6-7, a 4.02 ERA. Again, the Cubs, 3 games back of the Cardinals. They are tied with Milwaukee for the wild card lead in that second spot. They are a game and a half back of Washington. I mean, it's as simple as that, guys. Nothing to look for this series other than winning. We can put stock in different bullpen trends, usage. Of course, you want to see Kinsler back out there. Kimbrel will be back there at some point, so check on whether he'll be activated maybe before Thursday's game, but I doubt it, probably Friday or Saturday. And see how Steve Cishek responds after getting the day off, see how Rowan Wick is used, Kyle Ryan, they've been used quite a bit. Other than that, I mean, you can expect to see Castellanos in there, batting second or third, Schwarber up top, Horner every day, Zobrist in there frequently. And that's it. You got to go out there and you got to take care of business. At the very least, Corey, at the very least, which this is the part that kills me, and it's going to make me lose my mind when I wake up tomorrow. You've got to win 3 or 4 against Cardinals here. You just got to do it. If you win 3 or 4, you're still 1 game back, and that might be unrealistic even if you are 1 game back. But you got to win at least 3 or 4 in my mind to have a chance that you're comfortable with going into Pittsburgh and then going into St. Louis in that last series.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, you just got to win. We keep saying that, and they didn't get the memo in this Red Series. I thought we were pretty clear about
the wrong
that.
address we sent it.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who we sent that to, but it just didn't get across. But you've got to just win. And again, like the whole thing of this is, right, like Brendan and I love the Chicago Cubs, just like all of you. And it kills me. I can't explain how much it kills me to watch them play like they did on Wednesday night in a game that they really needed to win, and to just watch them suffer like that. It kills me. So I just want them to play better baseball. I just want them to put up a fight here against the Cardinals, go on a run, and try to win this division. And that's all it comes down to. I don't care what the lineup is. I don't have the energy for that anymore. Whoever's out there wearing that Cubs logo across their chest, I just want them to win. I just want them to give the Cardinals a fight for this division, because it is still attainable. A playoff spot is still attainable, and you have to figure out a way to win. But other than that, I don't think we have anything for you. I got to be honest with you folks. If you listened to even part of this podcast, although I guess you probably listen to all of it if you're even hearing this part, but we really appreciate it. I know that sometimes the last thing some of us want to do is break down these games even more after sitting through them. It's again, like, I think games like Wednesday really hurt a lot of us emotionally, mentally. We put a lot into this team, and games like that really take a toll, and they hurt. So I get it, and we appreciate you guys tuning in with us and going through this process with us. Your listenership really means a lot to us. Your support means a lot, and we thank you for that. But other than that, we will talk to you after the Cubs and Cardinals finish the Wrigley Field slate for 2019. I desperately hope that the tone of Sunday's podcast or Monday morning's podcast, what have you, is a better one. And I hope that we are able to send the boys off on that final road trip on a high note, fly the W at Wrigley Field 4 more times in 2019, at least 3, though. That would be fine. And then we will get ready for what should be a wild final week of baseball. But however it goes, we will be back with you late Sunday night, Monday morning, when you'll probably hear it. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and whether we are frustrated as all get out or we are loving what the Cubs are doing, wherever you may find us, we will always end by saying, Go Cubs.